My name is Rosalie A., and I am 29 years old. She screamed, "I don't owe you any explanations." When I asked why he didn't come home at all yesterday, I replied, "Understood." Then I packed my bags and disappeared. It feels stupidly small when I write it out, but it didn't feel small living it. We had plans for dinner, nothing fancy. I texted him that morning, asking what time he'd be home. He replied, "Later, don't wait up." That already rubbed me the wrong way, but I figured he was just in one of his moods. He'd been like that lately. Short, sharp, always annoyed that I existed in the same space. I still cooked. Around 7, I set the table. Around 7:30, the food was cold. I texted him, no response. Called once, straight to voicemail. Tried again around 8. Nothing. By 9, I was sitting alone at the table, scrolling my phone like an idiot, making excuses for him in my head. Phone died. I cleaned up, put the leftovers away, and went to bed, feeling weirdly calm, like I'd already accepted something I couldn't quite name yet. I woke up around 6:30 the next morning. His side of the bed was untouched. No dent in the pillow. No sign he'd come home at all. That's when the irritation hit. Not panic, not fear. Just this tight, controlled anger. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts, nothing. When he finally walked in around mid-morning, he didn't even look guilty. No apology, no explanation, just tossed his bag down and acted like I was the problem for standing there. I asked one question. "Why didn't you come home at all yesterday?" He snapped loud and sharp. "I don't owe you any explanations." And in that moment, something in me shut off completely. I said, "Understood." Then I walked into the bedroom and started packing. He laughed when he saw the suitcase. Not nervous, not confused. A sharp scoff, like I was being dramatic for attention. "What are you doing?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. "Packing," I said, folding a hoodie and placing it neatly on top. "For what?" he snapped. "Are you serious right now?" I didn't answer. I kept packing. Socks, jeans, charger, passport, all the boring, practical things you grab when you don't plan on coming back for a while. He rolled his eyes hard. "You're really going to throw a tantrum because I didn't come home one night." I finally looked at him. "It wasn't one night. It was the way you said you don't owe me anything." He shrugged. "Because I don't. You're not my mom. I don't have to report my movements to you." That word, report, did something to me. Like asking where your partner was suddenly made you some controlling authority figure. I nodded, calm, almost detached. "You're right. You don't owe me explanations." His expression shifted. He was expecting pushback, yelling, begging, anything but agreement. "So what is this?" he asked, gesturing at the bag. "Some manipulation tactic?" "No," I said. "It's me listening." He laughed again, louder. "God, you're unbelievable. You're really going to leave over this?" I zipped the suitcase. The sound felt final in a way words hadn't yet. "I'm leaving because I don't want to be in a relationship where disappearing overnight is normal, and asking about it gets me yelled at." He scoffed. "You're so sensitive lately. You always do this. Turn everything into a big deal." That was the line, the one that landed quietly and stuck. Because I realized in that moment he wasn't confused about why I was upset. He just didn't care. I picked up the bag and walked past him. He followed me into the living room, still talking, still annoyed, still convinced I'd cool off and come crawling back by dinner. "You'll regret this," he said. "You always do." I paused at the door and looked at him one last time. "No," I said calmly. "I don't think I will." Then I walked out, turned off my phone, and disappeared from his life completely. I slept on my friend Mark's couch that night. He didn't ask questions when I showed up with a suitcase. He just handed me a beer and asked if I wanted the couch or the spare room. That alone felt like oxygen. I turned my phone off and slept deeper than I had in months. I didn't turn it back on until the next morning. 12 missed calls, all from him. A scatter of texts that swung wildly in tone. "You're really doing this. This is so dramatic. Answer your phone." Wow. "So you just disappear now? You can't just walk out like that." That last one almost made me laugh. I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to punish him, because I finally understood something. Any reply would pull me right back into the same loop. Defend myself, explain myself, justify why basic respect mattered. I wasn't interested anymore. I stayed quiet all day. I went to work. I forwarded my mail. I changed my passwords. I told my manager I'd be taking a few personal days and might be relocating soon. Everything I did was boring and practical, which made it feel solid. That night, the emails started. Long ones now. Less attitude, more confusion. I don't get why you're doing this. You're acting like I cheated. Everyone disappears sometimes, Rosalie. You're overreacting. That word again. Overreacting. It was always his favorite way to shrink anything I felt. I blocked his email too. For the next week, I stayed quiet. I grabbed the rest of my things when I knew he'd be at work. No confrontation, no closure speech, just absence. That seemed to bother him more than anything. He kept trying to find cracks, new numbers, messages sent through friends. One of them said he was worried about me. Another said he just wanted to explain. I ignored them all. Silence isn't dramatic, it's final. Months passed, then a year. I moved cities, new job, new apartment, new routines, a quieter life. I didn't talk about him much, not because it hurt too much, but because he slowly stopped fitting anywhere in my present. I didn't wonder where he'd gone that night anymore. Curiosity faded. The question died without being answered. And then, almost 3 years later, he came looking for me. I only know he started looking for me because someone eventually told me. An old coworker ran into him at a cafe and recognized his name when he mentioned mine in passing. She said he asked casual questions, like he didn't care, like it was just curiosity. Where I live now, what city, whether I was seeing anyone. She said he smiled when he asked, like he expected the answers to be temporary. They weren't. By then, I'd been in my new city for almost 2 years. New apartment, new routine, new rhythm that didn't require constant explanation. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't broadcasting my life to people who had lost the right to access it. I didn't talk about him much, not because it still hurt, because the space he used to occupy had quietly closed. When he showed up a week later, I didn't know he was coming. That part matters. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind of ordinary day that would have blended into every other one if it hadn't been interrupted. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, coffee mug in my hand, listening to music that wasn't loud enough to demand attention. My girlfriend, Maya, was closer to the door. She looked up when the knock came. Not the casual knock of a delivery. Not a neighbor. It was sharp and hesitant, like someone who wasn't sure they should be there but had already committed. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked. I shook my head. She opened the door. I didn't see him at first. I just felt the air change. The pause stretched a second too long, then I heard her voice, polite and neutral. "Hi, can I help you?" When I stepped into the hallway, I saw him standing there with that posture he used to get when he was trying to look unbothered and failing. He looked smaller, not physically, just deflated. His eyes kept flicking between Maya and me, like his brain was lagging, trying to catch up to the scene in front of him. "I'm looking for Rosalie," he said. Maya turned slightly and looked at me. "That's you." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him. He looked exactly like someone who had expected a dramatic reunion and instead walked into a life that had continued perfectly fine without him. "Can we talk?" he asked finally, voice cracking through the silence. Maya glanced at me. Not confused, not threatened, just checking. I shook my head once. "There's nothing to talk about," I said calmly. His face went pale. "I didn't know you," he gestured vaguely at Maya. "I didn't know you'd moved on." Maya's smile didn't fade, but her tone shifted just enough to make the boundary clear. "She has. We actually have plans." That was the moment he really understood. This wasn't a rebound, this wasn't a phase, this was a closed door. "You just disappeared," he said, desperation slipping into his voice. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." I met his eyes. "You told me you didn't owe me explanations." His mouth opened, then closed. No comeback, no sarcasm this time. He nodded slowly, like someone finally accepting a diagnosis they didn't like. "I guess," he whispered. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." I didn't correct him. I stepped back and Maya gently closed the door. She didn't ask questions right away. That was one of the things that made me realize how different she was. No interrogation, no insecurity, just quiet presence. She locked the door, leaned back against it for a second, then walked over and wrapped her arms around me. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. And for once, I actually meant it. We went about our day like normal. Coffee, errands, laughing about something stupid at the grocery store. But in the back of my mind, I knew that wasn't the end of it. People like him don't travel that far for closure. They travel for control. I was right. It wasn't over. That night, after we'd finished dinner and the apartment had settled back into its familiar quiet, my phone buzzed with a notification I hadn't seen in years. A friend request. His name. A profile photo that looked carefully chosen. Soft lighting, casual smile, like nothing had happened. I didn't accept it. 10 minutes later, a message request appeared anyway. I wasn't trying to ambush you, I just needed to see you. You really hurt me. That one almost impressed me. The confidence to rewrite reality like I hadn't waited at a dinner table, gone to bed alone, woken up to an empty apartment, and then been screamed at for asking a single question. I didn't respond. More messages followed over the next few days. Long ones, emotional ones, some angry, some nostalgic. He jumped between blaming me and reminiscing about how good we were, like maybe one of those angles would crack something open. What stood out wasn't the sadness. It was the entitlement. He kept circling the same point. You don't just get to leave. But that was the thing he never understood. I did. I'd left the moment he taught me that my presence was optional, my concern was annoying, and my expectations were unreasonable. I blocked him. The next morning, Maya found me making breakfast, calm and focused, humming under my breath like nothing had happened. He tried to contact you again? She asked gently. Yeah, I said, but it's done. She smiled. Good. A few weeks passed, and I thought that chapter had finally closed. No messages, no surprise appearances, no third-party check-ins from concerned friends. Life settled back into something predictable. That should have been the end of his chapter. Then my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. It's me. Please don't hang up if I call again. I didn't reply. He called anyway. I watched the phone vibrate on the table until it stopped. Later that night, there was another knock at the door. Softer this time. Careful. Like someone who'd already been rejected once and didn't want to be seen as aggressive. Maya looked at me. Do you want me to answer it? I will, I said. When I opened the door, he was standing there again. Same spot, same hesitant posture, but this time the confidence was gone completely. His shoulders were slumped. His eyes were red. He looked like someone who'd finally realized the ground beneath him wasn't coming back. I just need 5 minutes, he said quickly. That's it. I won't come back after this. I sighed, not in anger, but in resignation. You already came back. He flinched. I didn't realize how serious you were, he said. I thought you just needed space. You always came back before. That sentence landed harder than anything else he'd said. You always came back. That was who he thought I was. Someone who cooled off. Someone who folded. Someone who accepted whatever behavior as long as enough time passed. I didn't come back because I finally listened, I said. To what? He asked, genuinely confused. To you. His eyes filled, but I felt nothing stir inside me. No urge to comfort him. No guilt. Just clarity. I don't hate you, I continued, but I don't miss you either. And that's how I know this was the right decision. He nodded slowly, like he was memorizing the moment for later pain. I guess I never thought you'd be the one to leave me, he whispered. I met his eyes. Neither did I. I closed the door gently, and for the first time I knew he wouldn't knock again. After that night, something unexpected happened. Nothing. No texts, no calls, no drive-bys, no third-party messages disguised as concern. The silence was so complete it felt intentional, like a door finally sealed instead of just pushed shut. For the first few days, I kept waiting for the familiar spike of anxiety, the delayed regret everyone warns you about. It never came. What came instead were small, almost unremarkable moments that added up to something heavier than relief. Mornings stopped feeling rushed. I woke up without that low-grade dread of checking my phone. I didn't rehearse conversations in the shower anymore. I didn't calculate my tone before speaking. I just existed. That sounds simple. It wasn't. It was unfamiliar in a way that took time to trust. Maya noticed before I did. She pointed it out one evening while we were cooking dinner, standing barefoot in the kitchen, music low, vegetables half-chopped. You don't flinch anymore, she said casually. At what? I asked. At nothing, she replied, which is kind of the point. She didn't ask me to unpack it. She never did that. She made space and let things settle on their own, which somehow made them heavier and easier at the same time. A few weeks later, I heard through someone else that he'd been asking about me again. Not directly. Never directly. He'd asked a mutual acquaintance whether I seemed happy now, whether I talked about him, whether I ever asked questions. Apparently, it bothered him that I didn't. That my silence wasn't dramatic, that I wasn't angry, that I wasn't publicly wounded. That was when I understood something important. The worst consequence he faced wasn't losing me in anger. It was losing me in peace. People who need control don't know what to do when they're no longer part of the equation. Around that same time, an old coworker reached out, someone I barely talked to anymore. The message was short and awkward. Random question, but did you really ghost him after one night? I stared at my phone and smiled. That was the story now. One harmless night, an overreaction, a dramatic girlfriend who couldn't handle independence. I typed one sentence back. I asked one question. He screamed at me for it. I left. No reply after that. What struck me wasn't the lie. It was how small he made it. As if respect was optional. As if disappearing overnight without a word was normal. As if boundaries were a flaw. I realized then that if I had stayed, that framing would have become my reality. Constantly shrinking myself to fit someone else's comfort, learning to accept less so I wouldn't be labeled difficult. That night, Maya rested her head on my shoulder while we watched something forgettable on TV. She didn't ask what I was thinking. She didn't need to. She just said softly, "I'm glad you left." "So am I replied. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the person who walked away. I felt like the person who chose herself. About a year after he showed up at my door, I heard one last update indirectly. I ran into someone I used to work with while grabbing coffee before work. Small talk turned into the usual, "What are you up to now?" exchange, and eventually my name must have triggered something. "Oh," she said hesitantly, "I think I know your ex. Lena, right?" I nodded once. "She wasn't great after you left," the coworker added carefully. "She talked about you a lot, like you just vanished for no reason." That made sense. In her version of events, I had to be the villain. Otherwise, she'd have to sit with the idea that one boundary was all it took for me to walk away. Apparently, after I left, she cycled through a few short relationships. Same pattern, intense beginnings, fast familiarity, then frustration when someone expected basic consideration. She complained that people were too needy for wanting to know where she was or when she'd be home. Hearing that didn't make me feel smug. It just confirmed what I already knew. She didn't lose me. She lost control. Later that night, I told Maya about the coffee shop conversation. She listened quietly, then said something that stayed with me. Some people confuse freedom with never being accountable to anyone. The moment accountability shows up, they feel trapped. That was Lena in one sentence. I'd mistaken her independence for strength. What it really was an allergy to responsibility, especially emotional responsibility. Looking back, the signs were always there. The way she bristled at check-ins, the way she framed basic communication as surveillance, the way my concern was always inconvenient unless it benefited her. I didn't leave because she didn't come home one night. I left because she made it clear that caring about her came with a penalty, and I decided I was done paying it. By then, the story didn't hurt anymore. It felt finished, like a book I could close without wondering how it ended. And for the first time, I understood something important. Walking away wasn't the dramatic choice. Staying would have been. The moment that sticks with me now isn't her screaming, or me packing, or even her standing frozen at my door years later. It's the quiet morning after I left. I remember waking up on Mark's couch before my alarm went off, sunlight coming through the blinds, my phone face down on the coffee table, finally silent. For a split second, I panicked. Not because I missed her, because I realized no one knew where I was or what I was doing. Then the panic passed. What replaced it was relief. Heavy, unfamiliar relief. The kind you don't realize you've been craving until it finally shows up. I didn't have to explain myself that morning. I didn't have to wonder if asking a normal question would turn into a fight. I didn't have to calculate my tone, my timing, my wording. I just existed. That's when it hit me. I'd been managing Lena more than loving her, managing her moods, managing her independence, managing her reactions so I wouldn't be accused of being too much. Somewhere along the line, I'd confused walking on eggshells with maturity. I wasn't heartbroken when I left. I was exhausted. And exhaustion doesn't heal with apologies or promises. It heals with distance. Months into my relationship with Maya, she asked me something that caught me off guard. "What made you leave so fast?" Most people would have tried to fix it. I thought about it and said, because the problem wasn't something that broke. It was something she believed. She believed that being in a relationship meant doing whatever she wanted without accountability. She believed love meant unlimited access to me, but limited access to her. And I believed her. Right up until the moment I stopped. Leaving wasn't brave. It was necessary. I didn't disappear to punish her. I disappeared to protect myself. And once I understood that difference, there was no going back. If anyone reading this is stuck asking themselves whether they're overreacting, here's what I'll say. If asking a reasonable question gets you punished, if silence is framed as independence, if leaving hurts them more than staying ever hurt you, then you already have your answer. I didn't disappear to make a point. I disappeared because staying would have meant disappearing anyway, just slower.